Long before the first cities rose from the earth, before written language or recorded history, humanity looked up, and what they saw changed everything. The night sky wasn't just a canvas of twinkling lights. It was a living storybook, a celestial clock, and a divine map all at once. Ancient cultures from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica built their worldviews around the movements of the stars, planets, and sun, shaping rituals, myths, and even the layout of their cities to align with the heavens. Think about that for a moment. The same constellations we casually glance at today once determined when to plant crops, when to wage war, and how to honor the gods. The cosmos wasn't just observed, it was woven into the very heartbeat of daily life. What if I told you that the pyramids of Egypt, the stone circles of Britain, and the temples of Angkor Wat all share a hidden language written in the stars? These monumental structures weren't just feats of engineering, they were cosmic mirrors designed to reflect the order of the universe. The ancients believed that by aligning their world with the heavens, they could harness its power, ensure prosperity, and even commune with the divine. This wasn't superstition, it was a sophisticated understanding of patterns that governed their survival. The rising of Sirius signaled the Nile's flood, the solstices marked sacred turning points, and the phases of the moon dictated everything from festivals to harvests. Astronomy wasn't a science separate from culture, it was the foundation of civilization itself. But here's the most fascinating part. These celestial connections aren't just relics of the past. They linger in our holidays, our myths, even the way we measure time. Ever wonder why we have 7 days in a week? Thank the Babylonians, who named each day after the 7 celestial bodies they could see with the naked eye. Or why so many cultures share stories of a great flood. Look to the stars. Many of these tales trace back to astronomical events like comets or eclipses that ancient sky watchers interpreted as omens. This video isn't just about rediscovering lost knowledge. It's about uncovering how the universe shaped us, how the stars guided our ancestors' hands, hearts, and imaginations. So let's embark on this journey together, tracing the light of the past to understand how the heavens didn't just watch over humanity, they helped create it. Imagine standing under an open sky 30,000 years ago, far from city lights, where the Milky Way blazed so brightly it cast shadows on the ground. For our ancestors, this wasn't just a spectacle, it was survival. The earliest astronomers weren't scholars with telescopes. They were hunters tracking animal migrations, farmers predicting rains, and storytellers weaving myths to explain the unexplainable. In the caves of Lascaux, France, among paintings of bison and horses, archaeologists found strange dots and shapes that match the constellations we know today. These weren't random doodles, they were star maps, etched by people who understood that the heavens held the key to their world. Take Stonehenge, that mysterious ring of standing stones in England. For centuries, it was dismissed as a primitive temple until researchers noticed something extraordinary. At dawn on the summer solstice, sunlight pierces through the stones like a laser, marking the longest day of the year. This wasn't accidental. The builders aligned massive boulders with the sun's movements, creating a calendar that predicted seasons with astonishing precision. And they weren't alone. Halfway across the world, the Maya built pyramids like stairways to the stars, with steps designed to cast serpent-shaped shadows during equinoxes. These cultures, separated by oceans, shared a universal truth. The sky was a clock, and reading it meant the difference between feast and famine. But here's what's truly remarkable. These early stargazers didn't just observe, they transformed knowledge into legend. The Babylonians saw lions and scorpions in the stars, naming constellations that still fill our night skies. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia traced the emu in the dark, not with stars but with the black spaces between them, proving that astronomy isn't just about what's visible, but how you choose to see. Even the pyramids of Giza, often celebrated for their engineering, hide celestial secrets. Their shafts point directly to Orion's belt, mirroring the pharaoh's belief that the stars were a gateway to immortality. This was more than science or religion, it was a dialogue between earth and sky. When Polynesian navigators crossed thousands of miles of open ocean using only the stars, they weren't just following dots of light. They memorized the rise and set of hundreds of stars, the color of the waves, even the flight paths of birds, stitching together a celestial roadmap passed down through chants and stories. Their voyages weren't reckless leaps into the unknown. They were the culmination of generations watching, learning, and daring to trust the sky. So the next time you glance upward, remember, those same stars once guided entire civilizations. They dictated when to plant, when to harvest, when to celebrate, and when to mourn. They were humanity's first teachers, and their lessons shaped the world we know today. From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Central America, the night sky didn't just inspire stories, it became the very fabric of them. Take the ancient Babylonians, who gazed at the shimmering band of the Milky Way and saw not random stars, but the flowing waters of the celestial Euphrates, a divine river mirroring the one that nourished their crops below. This wasn't mere poetry, it was a way to root their daily lives in something vast and eternal. Similarly, the Egyptians didn't just worship Sirius as a bright star, they called it Sopdet, the goddess whose annual rising coincided with the Nile's life-giving floods. To them, this wasn't coincidence, it was cosmic choreography, a sign that the heavens and earth were inextricably linked. What's striking is how these myths served dual purposes. They weren't just tales to explain the unknown, they were vessels for preserving vital knowledge. The Aboriginal story of the emu in the sky, for instance, wasn't just about the bird's shape in the dark patches of the Milky Way, it was a seasonal clock. When the emu appeared high overhead, it signaled the time to gather eggs. In Greece, the myth of Orion, the hunter fleeing the scorpion, wasn't just entertainment. It mirrored the constellation's movements, with Scorpius rising as Orion set, a celestial game of tag playing out yearly. These stories turned abstract star patterns into memorable lessons, ensuring generations could read the sky without telescopes or textbooks. But the stars did more than guide practical life, they shaped humanity's deepest questions. The Norse saw the aurora borealis as the armor of Valkyries, while the Maori believed the Pleiades cluster was a canoe carrying ancestors to the afterlife. These weren't just colorful explanations for natural phenomena, they were frameworks for understanding life, death, and humanity's place in the cosmos. Even today, traces of these celestial myths linger. The Zodiac, born from Babylonian star maps, still influences culture, while the Hindu festival of Makar Sankranti marks the sun's transition into Capricorn, a tradition stretching back thousands of years. Perhaps most fascinating is how these stories transcended geography. Cultures separated by continents shared eerily similar themes. Dragons, serpents, and great floods appear in myths from China to the Americas, often tied to astronomical events like comets or eclipses. This wasn't just imagination at work, it was humanity collectively reaching for the stars to make sense of the world. The sky was our first storybook, and its chapters remain etched in the rituals, art, and beliefs that define us even now. The Zodiac we know today began as something far more practical than personality predictions. It was ancient sky watchers' way of mapping time itself. Picture Babylonian astronomers under the clear desert night, tracking the sun's slow march through a dozen constellations over the course of a year. These 12 slices of sky from Aries to Pisces weren't just pretty patterns, they were a celestial calendar helping farmers time their planting and rulers schedule sacred festivals. The word zodiac even comes from the Greek for circle of animals, a nod to the creatures and myths these star groups evoked. But what's fascinating is how this scientific tool gradually transformed into something far more personal, a mirror held up to human nature itself. By the time the Greeks inherited the Babylonian system, they'd woven it into their mythology, linking each sign to stories of gods and heroes. Taurus became the bull Zeus transformed into, while Scorpio was the creature sent to slay Orion. This wasn't just creative storytelling, it reflected a growing belief that the stars didn't just guide seasons, but souls. Hellenistic astrologers took it further, assigning personality traits based on planetary positions at birth, merging astronomy with the idea that the cosmos could shape individual destiny. And they weren't alone. Halfway across the world, the Chinese zodiac, with its 12 animal signs like the dragon and rabbit, developed independently yet shared that same impulse to connect celestial cycles with human character. What's remarkable is how these systems adapted to their cultures. In India, Vedic astrology intertwined the zodiac with Hindu cosmology, while the Maya tracked the ecliptic through their own animal symbols like the mysterious jaguar. Even medieval European doctors consulted zodiac charts to diagnose illness, believing each sign governed a body part. Aries ruled the head, Pisces the feet. This blend of observation and interpretation reveals something profound: humanity's need to find order in the stars, whether for harvests or self-understanding. Yet the zodiac's endurance lies in its duality. Today, we know the constellation's shapes are accidental alignments of distant stars, and the sun's path has shifted over millennia due to Earth's wobble. Your star sign likely doesn't match the actual constellation behind the sun on your birthday. But that hardly matters. Horoscopes persist because they tap into something timeless, our longing to feel part of a grander pattern, to see our joys and struggles reflected in the vast, glittering tapestry above. Whether as farmer's almanac or morning newspaper feature, the zodiac remains astronomy's most personal legacy, proof that when we look up, we're also looking inward. The sun and moon weren't just lights in the sky to ancient civilizations, they were living gods, pulsing with divine energy. In Egypt, Ra's golden bark sailed across the heavens each day, his heat both nurturing crops and scorching enemies. The pharaohs claimed to be his descendants, their authority as unchallengeable as the sunrise itself. Meanwhile, in Japan, the sun goddess Amaterasu didn't just illuminate the world. Her retreat into a cave once plunged the earth into darkness until dancing gods lured her back, a myth that may echo ancient fears of eclipses. These weren't mere stories, they were explanations for why the world thrived or faltered, why seasons turned, and why kings ruled. Lunar deities held their own profound power. The Hindu god Chandra rode his silver chariot across the night, his waxing and waning governing not just tides but the rhythms of life itself, menstrual cycles, planting schedules, even the ebb and flow of luck. The Mesopotamian moon god Sin was so revered that his symbol, the crescent, crowned the ziggurats of And let's not forget the Maya's Ixchel, a goddess of both the moon and childbirth, weaving celestial patterns into the very act of creation. What's striking is how these lunar figures were often gentler than their solar counterparts, associated with intuition, mystery, and the unseen, qualities that mirrored the moon's elusive glow. But worship wasn't passive, it was architectural. The great temple of Karnak in Egypt wasn't just grand for grandor's sake. Its central axis aligned with the winter solstice sunrise, flooding the inner sanctum with light to recharge the god statue. In Peru, the Inca carved windows into Machu Picchu's Torreon to frame the June solstice sunrise, turning stone into a celestial observatory. These weren't coincidences. When the builders of Newgrange in Ireland designed a tomb where the winter solstice sun pierces its dark passageway for 17 minutes each year, they were doing more than honoring the dead. They were tethering the afterlife to the cosmos's unshakable order. What's remarkable is how these practices blurred the line between science and spirituality. Priests predicting eclipses weren't just astronomers or clerics. They were both, wielding celestial knowledge to maintain cosmic harmony. A Babylonian clay tablet warning of an upcoming eclipse didn't just advise precautions, it instructed the king to temporarily step down so an impostor could absorb the god's wrath. This was astronomy as survival strategy, where understanding the sky meant safeguarding society itself. Even today, traces of these sky gods linger. The word Monday comes from Moon's Day, while Sunday honors the sun, a linguistic fossil of celestial worship. Modern holidays like Christmas and Easter align, however loosely, with solstices and equinoxes, echoes of a time when humanity's calendar was written in starlight. These deities may have faded from worship, but their legacy remains, proof that for our ancestors, the sky wasn't just above them, it was within them, shaping faith, power, and the very rhythm of existence. Ancient architects didn't just build structures, they encoded the heavens into stone. Take El Caracol at Chichén Itzá, a winding tower that looks more like a modern observatory than a Mayan relic. Its narrow windows don't frame random views, they pinpoint Venus at its most extreme positions in the sky. To the Maya, Venus wasn't just a planet, it was Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god whose movements dictated when to wage war or plant crops. This wasn't guesswork. The tower's alignment is precise to within fractions of a degree, proving these builders possessed mathematical sophistication rivaling today's planetarium software. Yet El Caracol wasn't merely a calculator, it was a temple where priests performed rituals during celestial events, blending science with ceremony to harness the cosmos's power. Egypt's Karnak temple reveals an equally deliberate marriage of sky and sanctuary. Its great hypostyle hall, with its forest of towering columns, seems designed to awe until you notice how the central axis aligns perfectly with the winter solstice sunrise. On that shortest day of the year, sunlight pierces the hall's shadowy depths like a golden thread, illuminating statues of gods hidden in darkness the rest of the year. The effect wasn't decorative, it was theological theater, a yearly reminder that the pharaoh considered the sun god's earthly avatar renewed Maat, the cosmic order. Even the temple's hieroglyphs whisper astronomical secrets. One chamber's ceiling depicts the northern constellations, mapping the night sky as a pathway for the pharaoh's soul. What's astonishing is how these sites transcended their cultures. In Peru, the Coricancha's walls once gleamed with gold to reflect sunlight during solstice ceremonies, while England's Stonehenge marked lunar standstills with stones hauled from hundreds of miles away. These weren't isolated projects, they were part of a global impulse to anchor human life to celestial cycles. The Incas built pillars on hilltops to track the sun's shifting horizon positions, while Nabta Playa in predynastic Egypt features stone circles older than Stonehenge, aligning with Sirius's rising. Each culture interpreted the sky differently, but their solutions shared a common truth. Architecture could freeze the sky's motion, turning ephemeral light into enduring stone. But why go to such lengths? Because astronomy was never just about prediction, it was about legitimacy. When a Mesopotamian king claimed to rule by divine right, his priests could prove it by forecasting an eclipse. When the Maya elite declared a sacred calendar cycle complete, the people saw it confirmed by Kukulkan's shadow slithering down El Castillo's steps. These observatories weren't passive tools, they were stages where power played out under the stars' watchful gaze. Even today, their ruins remind us that every measurement, every alignment was also a prayer, a plea to the universe to keep time and order intact. For farmers tilling the earth thousands of years ago, the difference between abundance and starvation often hung on reading the stars correctly. Picture a Babylonian elder squinting at the pre-dawn sky, waiting for the first glimpse of the Pleiades cluster rising just before the sun, a signal that the barley planting season had arrived. This heliacal rising, when a star becomes visible again after being hidden by the sun's glare, wasn't just celestial trivia, it was the agricultural equivalent of a blinking green light. The Greeks called these stars the sailor's guide, but their farmers knew them just as intimately. When the Pleiades vanished in spring, it was time to harvest, and when they reappeared in autumn, plows broke the soil. The Nile River's floods followed Sirius's lead with uncanny precision. Egyptian records show that the dog star's first morning appearance above the horizon, usually around mid-July, heralded the river's life-giving inundation within days. Temples along the Nile housed star clocks, where priests tracked Sirius's movements like divine meteorologists. Farmers didn't need to understand astronomy's mechanics to benefit from its predictions. They simply knew that when the priests announced Sirius's return, the fields would soon drown under fertile silt. This cosmic coordination was so reliable that Egypt's entire agricultural cycle, planting, growing, harvesting, revolved around it for 3,000 years. But how did this knowledge survive without printed manuals or smartphone alerts? Through songs, stories, and stone, Polynesian navigators memorized star paths as chants, with rhythmic phrases encoding the rising and setting of key stars for each season. The Maori of New Zealand planted sweet potatoes when Matariki, the Pleiades, first twinkled in the dawn sky, a practice revived today as a national holiday. In Europe, medieval labors of the month manuscripts depicted farmers plowing under zodiac signs, while the Maya etched planting dates into stelae, aligning them with Venus's cycles. These weren't just traditions, they were lifelines forged through generations of trial and error under the star's silent tutelage. What's often overlooked is how these systems accounted for celestial drift. The Earth's wobble means stars shift positions over centuries, yet cultures adapted. When the Babylonian mul, a pin, tablets, essentially the world's oldest farmer's almanac, noted that the Pleiades rose a month later than in their ancestors' time, they didn't discard tradition, they updated it. Similarly, the Inca's sec system used sacred sightlines to recalibrate solstice markers as the sun's position subtly changed. This flexibility reveals a profound truth. Ancient astronomy wasn't static dogma, but a living science refined by countless hands turning soil under the same stars they relied upon to survive. The legacy of this star-fed wisdom lingers in unexpected places. Ever wonder why harvest festivals cluster around autumn equinoxes, or why planting folklore persists in rural almanacs? These are the echoes of a time when humanity's relationship with the sky wasn't abstract but as vital as rain. Modern farmers may track weather apps instead of constellations, but the impulse remains the same: to sync human effort with nature's rhythms. The stars that once dictated plowshares and planting sticks now remind us of a fundamental bond. Beneath the vast celestial clock, we're still keeping time. Long before satellites crisscrossed the skies, the Polynesians embarked on voyages that defied logic, sailing thousands of miles across open ocean with no compasses, no maps, just the stars as their guide. Picture a double-hulled canoe cutting through Pacific waves, its navigator leaning back to memorize the exact angle of rising stars, the way certain constellations dipped toward the horizon like celestial signposts. They didn't just follow single stars, they tracked entire star paths, sequences of constellations that rose and set like clockwork over familiar islands. The Hawaiians called this haukulhoku, or star steering, a skill so precise that modern researchers have replicated these voyages using only traditional methods and arrived within sight of their targets after weeks at sea. But this wasn't cold calculation, it was a living science wrapped in story. Navigators memorized the heavens through chants like the Maoris' Te Ara o Wanui, which mapped the Milky Way as a great canoe carrying ancestral spirits. The star cluster Pleiades wasn't just a navigation marker, it was Matariki, a mother surrounded by her children whose appearance signaled the new year. Every twinkling light held layers of meaning, practical, spiritual, and communal. When European explorers marveled at Polynesians, finding islands smaller than a speck in the ocean, they missed the depth of this knowledge, an oral encyclopedia of wave patterns, bird flight paths, and even the taste of seawater, all woven around the stars' unwavering rhythm. Meanwhile, under the vast desert skies of Arabia, traders carved a different kind of celestial roadmap. The North Star, or Al-Judai in Arabic, became their anchor in shifting sands. Unlike the Polynesian star paths, which relied on movement, desert navigation hinged on stillness. The North Star's fixed position above the horizon, unchanging while other constellations wheeled around it. Caravans crossing the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, used its height to gauge latitude, while the moon's phases dictated safe travel windows between scorching days and freezing nights. The stars weren't just tools, they were silent partners in survival, turning perilous journeys into repeatable routes. What's extraordinary is how these systems enabled more than travel, they fueled globalization. Polynesian star knowledge allowed sweet potatoes from South America to reach Pacific islands, while Arab traders carried spices and ideas along celestial highways stretching from Zanzibar to China. The Silk Road of the Sea, connecting India to East Africa, thrived because sailors could read the monsoon winds predictable as the stars themselves, to time their crossings. This wasn't just navigation, it was cultural alchemy, blending astronomy with commerce, mythology with mathematics. Even today, traces of these star-guided journeys linger. The Polynesian voyaging society's Hokulau canoe still circles the globe using ancient techniques, proving that celestial navigation isn't obsolete. It's a testament to human ingenuity. The next time you glance at the Big Dipper, remember, its stars once guided caravans through deserts and canoes to undiscovered shores, stitching the world together long before longitude or GPS. The heavens weren't just a map, they were the first thread in humanity's vast, interconnected story. Imagine the terror of an ancient farmer watching the sun vanish at midday, the sky darkening without warning, birds falling silent, the world plunged into eerie twilight. To civilizations without telescopes or textbooks, a solar eclipse wasn't just a celestial event, it was a divine crisis. The Babylonians saw it as the god's wrath, a dragon swallowing the sun, and their kings would temporarily abdicate, replaced by straw effigies to absorb the punishment. In China, where eclipses were believed to foretell the emperor's downfall, court astronomers worked feverishly to refine prediction methods. One slip could mean chaos, or worse, rebellion. The famous story of two astronomers, HSI and Ho, executed for failing to predict an eclipse in 2165 BC, underscores how high the stakes were. Yet within that fear lay the seeds of discovery. The Maya didn't just dread eclipses, they mapped their cycles with astonishing precision, carving tables into stone that could forecast them centuries in advance. Their Dresden Codex includes eclipse warnings tied to Venus's movements, proving they saw patterns where others saw only omens. Meanwhile, Greek astronomers like Thales used Babylonian records to predict an eclipse in 585 BC, halting a battle between the Medes and Lydians when daylight suddenly faded. This moment, often called the birth of scientific astronomy, reveals a turning point when humans began wresting order from the sky's apparent chaos. What's fascinating is how cultures spun protective rituals around these events. Norse myths told of sky wolves chasing the sun, while Hindu lore described the demon Rahu devouring it, traditions that birthed practices like banging pots to scare away the darkness. The Inca, during an eclipse, would fast and tie up their dogs, believing their howls might anger the gods further. These weren't just superstitions, they were acts of cosmic diplomacy, attempts to restore balance when the universe seemed broken. Even the word eclipse comes from the Greek eklapsis, meaning abandonment, a reflection of that primal fear that the sun might never return. But eclipses also became tools of power. When Columbus, stranded in Jamaica in 1504, used an almanac to predict a lunar eclipse, he terrified the local Arawak people into supplying his crew by claiming the moon would bleed if they refused. Centuries earlier, the Assyrian king Ashur-dan III documented an eclipse so precisely that modern astronomers used it to recalibrate Earth's rotation history. These moments capture astronomy's dual role, a source of terror, yes, but also a weapon, a calendar, and ultimately, a bridge between the heavens and human ambition. Today, we chase eclipses with cameras and protective glasses, but the awe remains. The same phenomenon that once sent emperors to their knees now draws millions to gaze upward, united by a shadow racing across the sun. In that shared moment, we're not so far from our ancestors, still humbled, still curious, still finding our place under the sky's vast, unpredictable stage. To the Maya, time wasn't a straight line. It was a sacred spiral, a cosmic breath inhaling and exhaling in precise celestial rhythms. Their Dresden Codex, a bark paper book surviving centuries of humidity and conquest, isn't just a historical artifact, it's a mathematical masterpiece. Within its pages, scribes tracked Venus's 584-day cycle with an error margin of just 2 hours over 500 years. But this wasn't cold calculation, it was theology written in numbers. The planet they called Noek, the great star, wasn't merely observed, it was feared as the god Kukulkan's fiery eye, its appearances dictating when to crown kings, wage wars, or plant maize. The Maya didn't separate astronomy from destiny. They believed the heavens dictated the rise and fall of empires. Nowhere is this fusion clearer than at Chichen Itza's El Castillo pyramid. Its 4 stairways each have 91 steps totaling 364, plus the platform making 365, a solar year etched in stone. But the true marvel happens at equinoxes, when sunlight slithers down the northern staircase, forming a serpent's shadow that connects earth to sky. This wasn't just spectacle, it was a celestial handshake confirming the priest's predictions and the god's favor. Nearby, the Caracol Observatory's narrow windows frame Venus at its most northerly and southerly positions, turning architecture into a permanent almanac. The Maya didn't build monuments to the stars, they built with them, weaving astronomy into the very fabric of their cities. Their calendar system reveals even deeper sophistication. While Europe languished in the Dark Ages, Mayan scribes calculated a solar year at 365.242 days, closer to modern measurements than the Gregorian calendar adopted centuries later. They synchronized this Hab civil calendar with the sacred Tzolk'in, a 260-day cycle of numerology and astrology, creating a 52-year calendar round where dates realigned. But their true genius lay in the long count, a linear timeline starting from a mythical creation date in 3114 BC, capable of spanning millennia. This wasn't just timekeeping, it was a theological statement that history moved in predictable, divine patterns, with celestial events like eclipses recurring like verses in a sacred hymn. What's often overlooked is how this system served daily life. Farmers didn't need complex charts. They followed zenith passage days when the sun directly overhead cast no shadow, signaling optimal planting times. The Dresden Codex's eclipse tables, adorned with jaguars devouring the sun, doubled as survival guides, warning when darkness might disrupt harvests. Even their games reflected this cosmic order. The ball court at Capon aligns with the solstice sun, turning ritual sport into celestial theater. Yet the Mayas' greatest legacy might be their view of time itself. Where modern science sees a neutral dimension, they saw a living force cycles within cycles, where past events would return in symbolic echoes. A king's coronation timed to a Venus alignment wasn't just pageantry. It was an anchor in cosmic time, binding human action to universal order. This worldview didn't just predict the stars, it sought to harmonize with them, a dance of numbers, gods, and cornfields under the same infinite sky. Standing on Salisbury Plain, Stonehenge's massive sarsen stones seem to whisper secrets across 5,000 years. But this isn't just a circle of rocks, it's a meticulously engineered machine, its components aligned like celestial clockwork. At dawn on the summer solstice, sunlight slices through the monument's heart, striking the heel stone with laser precision. Come winter solstice, the setting sun frames the altar stone in golden light, marking the year's shortest day. These aren't accidents, they're proof that Neolithic builders orchestrated stone and sky into a single harmonious system. Recent laser scans reveal something astonishing. Many stones were deliberately shaped to enhance astronomical sightlines, their surfaces smoothed to catch specific angles of light. This wasn't crude sun worship, it was precise solar science encoded in megaliths. Yet Stonehenge's celestial genius extends beyond the solstices. The station stones, often overshadowed by the iconic trilithons, form a rectangle that aligns with the moon's most extreme rising and setting points during its 18.6-year cycle. Known as a lunar standstill, this rare event would have been a sacred spectacle for ancient sky watchers. Even the avenue leading to Stonehenge mirrors the sun's path at midsummer, suggesting processions timed to cosmic rhythms. What's remarkable is how these alignments persist despite centuries of stone rearrangements, like a puzzle where the solution stayed intact even as pieces shifted. Theories about Stonehenge's purpose weave together practicality and mysticism. Some argue it functioned as a Neolithic farmer's almanac, its alignment signaling when to plant or harvest. Others see it as a celestial temple where solstice gatherings renewed bonds between earth and sky. The discovery of cremated remains hints at ancestral veneration, with the stones serving as a bridge between the living and the dead under the watchful eye of the cosmos. But perhaps the most compelling clue lies in the nearby Durrington walls, where pig bones show slaughter peaks around midwinter, evidence of feasts timed to astronomical events. Stonehenge didn't just track time, it orchestrated community life around the universe's heartbeat. What sets Stonehenge apart is its sheer ambition. The blue stones hauled from Wales' Preseli Hills, 250 miles away, weren't just building materials. They were sacred objects, possibly chosen for their acoustic properties or healing legends. When struck, some stones produce eerie metallic echoes, leading researchers to speculate they were used in ritual soundscapes mimicking celestial harmonies. This wasn't just architecture, it was multisensory cosmology, blending sight, sound, and ceremony into an immersive experience of the heavens. modern astronomers confirm Stonehenge's sophistication using digital reconstructions of ancient skies. One simulation showed that around 3000 BC, the winter solstice moon would have appeared to roll along the monument's outer circle like a celestial marble. Such precision suggests generations of observation passed down through oral tradition, a living astronomy etched not in books but in stories and stones. Even today, as druids and scientists gather beneath its arches, Stonehenge remains what it always was, a testament to humanity's eternal conversation with the stars. The Babylonians didn't just watch the stars, they turned them into a language of power. In the shadow of their towering ziggurats, court astrologers tracked celestial movements with a precision that would shape empires. Their greatest innovation, the Zodiac, a 12-part map of the heavens dividing the sun's annual path into constellations like Taurus the bull and Leo the lion. But this wasn't about personal fortune-telling, it was political strategy. When Venus appeared in Scorpio or Jupiter aligned with the moon, scribes etched ominous warnings on clay tablets. If the moon is eclipsed when it stands in Leo, the king will be betrayed by his own son. These weren't vague prophecies, they were celestial intelligence reports, guiding rulers on when to wage war, marry, or even delay public appearances to avoid ill-fated stars. What's astonishing is how methodical they were. The Enuma Anu Enlil, a 7,000 domain collection, reads like an ancient spreadsheet of cosmic cause and effect. One tablet notes that if Mars dims in the path of E, barley prices will rise, a direct link between astronomy and economics. Another warns of rebellions when Mercury wears a crown, a halo caused by atmospheric ice. This system wasn't superstition. It was an early form of risk assessment, turning the sky's chaos into actionable data. Even eclipses, those terrifying celestial wildcards, became predictable thanks to the Babylonians' discovery of the Saros cycle, a repeating 18-year pattern of lunar and solar eclipses still used by astronomers today. Yet the real revolution came when this knowledge crossed borders. By the 4th century BC, Babylonian star lore reached Greece, where scholars like Berossus established astrology schools on the island of Kos. Here, the focus shifted from kingdoms to individuals. Birth charts emerged, plotting planetary positions at one's first breath to map personality and destiny. The Greeks added poetic layers, linking zodiac signs to myths. Aries became the golden ram of Jason's Argonauts, while Gemini embodied the twin brothers Castor and Pollux. Meanwhile, in India, Vedic astrologers adapted the system into Jyotisha, aligning it with Hindu concepts of karma and reincarnation. The same stars now told different stories, reflecting each culture's unique dialogue with the cosmos. Modern horoscopes might seem light years away from Babylon's omen tablets, but the DNA remains. Your rising sign traces back to the Babylonian Lubat, the point where the ecliptic crosses the eastern horizon at dawn. The idea that planetary aspects create harmony or tension, straight from cuneiform texts describing celestial conversations. Even the 12-house system, dividing life into areas like career and relationships, echoes Babylonian prototypes. The difference: Babylonians saw these patterns as divine decrees, while today we might call them archetypes, a proof that humanity still looks to the stars not just for answers, but for the timeless comfort of cosmic connection. So the next time you skim a horoscope, remember, you're participating in a tradition that once determined the fate of kings. Those whimsical magazine predictions are the grandchildren of a system so vital that Assyrian kings employed teams of astrologers as royal advisors. Whether as science, psychology, or storytelling, astrology endures because it taps into our oldest longing, to feel the universe isn't just vast, but intimately aware of us, whispering secrets written in light across millennia. To the ancient Egyptians, the Great Pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a stairway to the stars. Hidden deep within its massive stone walls, narrow shafts angle upward with eerie precision, not for ventilation as once thought, but as celestial pathways. One pair aligns perfectly with Orion's belt during the era of its construction, mirroring the constellation's position in the night sky. This wasn't architectural coincidence, it was deliberate cosmic engineering. The Egyptians saw Orion as the god Osiris, ruler of the afterlife, and by aligning the pyramid's shafts to his celestial form, they ensured the pharaoh's soul could ascend to join the eternal gods. Every block, every corridor was a calculated step in bridging earth and heaven, but the pyramids were just one piece of Egypt's astronomical puzzle. Far to the south, on the island of Elephantine, priests kept vigil for Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. Its first appearance just before sunrise, known as the Heliacal Rising, coincided with the Nile's annual flood with uncanny reliability. When Sirius shimmered into view, it wasn't just a celestial event, it was a national alarm clock. Scribes recorded these sightings in temple archives, using them to predict when the life-giving waters would spill over the riverbanks, transforming barren land into fertile fields. This wasn't mere stargazing, it was statecraft. The pharaoh's claim to divinity hinged on his ability to control these floods, and by extension, the stars that heralded them. The Egyptians didn't just track stars, they weaponized time itself. Inside tombs and temples, diagonal star clocks adorned the ceilings, their intricate grids mapping the nightly journey of decans, 36 star groups that rose consecutively throughout the year. Each decan marked an hour of the night, turning the sky into a vast celestial clock face. Priests used these charts not only to tell time but to schedule rituals with divine precision. Even their civil calendar, with its 12 months of 30 days plus 5 epagomenal days, was designed to sync with Sirius's cycle, a testament to how deeply astronomy governed daily life. What's often overlooked is how this celestial knowledge reinforced social hierarchy. The pharaoh wasn't just a king, he was the earthly incarnation of Horus, the sky god, and his astronomers were high priests wielding star charts like sacred blueprints. When a temple was built, its axis aligned with solstice sunrises or specific stars, physically manifesting the connection between divine order and human authority. The temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, for instance, was oriented so that on the winter solstice, sunlight flooded the inner sanctuary, illuminating statues of the gods like a celestial spotlight. These architectural feats weren't just tributes to the gods, they were propaganda in stone, proving the pharaoh's unique ability to commune with the cosmos. The legacy of Egyptian astronomy lingers in surprising ways. Our 24-hour day, a descendant of their decan system, the modern Gregorian calendar. Still structured around the solar year they meticulously tracked, even the word horoscope traces back to the Greek adaptation of Egyptian star charts. But perhaps their greatest lesson wasn't in precision, it was in perspective. To the Egyptians, the universe wasn't a cold, indifferent void. It was a grand, interconnected machine where human lives and celestial movements were threads in the same cosmic tapestry. The stars didn't just shine above them, they lived among them, guiding the plow, the flood, and the pharaoh's ascent to immortality. The shift from celestial myth to cosmic mathematics began not in an observatory, but on the shores of ancient Ionia, where the philosopher Thales startled his neighbors by predicting a solar eclipse in 585 BC. Unlike the Babylonians who saw eclipses as omens, Thales proposed something radical: that the universe operated by predictable laws, not capricious gods. His pupil Anaximander took it further, sketching the first known mechanical model of the heavens, with Earth floating unsupported at the center like a cosmic linchpin. This was astronomy's first great pivot, replacing dragons swallowing the sun with geometry and ratios, yet still preserving the sky's sacred wonder. By the time Ptolemy penned his Almagest 7 centuries later, Greek astronomy had crystallized into a breathtaking fusion of math and mythology. His geocentric system, with its intricate epicycles and deferents, could predict planetary motions with astonishing accuracy, all while maintaining Aristotle's philosophical ideal of perfect celestial spheres. But look closer, and the myths still shimmer through. The constellation Hercules kneels eternally in the northern sky, his labors memorialized in stars, while Andromeda's chains stretch across the heavens beside her rescuer Perseus. Even as Greek thinkers like Aristarchus proposed a heliocentric model, a concept forgotten for 1500 years, they named planets after gods, Mars the warrior, Venus the lover, proving science couldn't fully strip the sky of its stories. What made Greek astronomy revolutionary wasn't just its models, but its methods. Hipparchus didn't merely observe the stars, he catalogued over 850 of them, noting their brightness and positions with tools like the armillary sphere. When he detected the slow wobble of Earth's axis called precession, it wasn't through divine revelation but painstaking comparisons to Babylonian records. Yet for all this rigor, the Greeks never dismissed the sky's poetic power. Eratosthenes calculated Earth's circumference with sticks and shadows, yet also penned star myths explaining the Milky Way as spilled milk from the goddess Hera's breast. This duality shaped Western thought for millennia. Ptolemy's system, wrong as it was, endured because it satisfied both logic and longing. Its clockwork precision comforted scholars, while its celestial spheres resonated with Christian and Islamic theologians who saw them as layers of divine creation. Even Copernicus, when finally challenging geocentrism, framed his sun-centered universe with Greek geometric elegance, preserving the idea of perfect circular orbits. The legacy lingers in our language. Galaxy comes from the Greek for milky, while planet means wanderer, reflecting how these cultures blended calculation with wonder. Perhaps that's the Greeks' greatest gift, not just advancing astronomy, but reminding us that understanding the cosmos doesn't require stripping it of magic. Their constellations still guide navigators, their planetary names grace spacecraft, and their questions about Earth's place, the star's nature, the universe's design still drive discovery. They taught us to measure the heavens without ceasing to marvel at them, proving that science and myth aren't opposites, but two lenses for viewing the same infinite sky. In ancient China, the night sky wasn't just a spectacle, it was an imperial bulletin board where celestial events dictated the fate of dynasties. When a guest star, what we now call a supernova, blazed unexpectedly in 1054 AD, Song dynasty astronomers didn't just record it, they interpreted it as heaven's verdict on the emperor's rule. These weren't poetic metaphors, they were bureaucratic bulletins with court astrologers scrambling to explain why the heavens had suddenly flared with disapproval. The mandate of heaven, that sacred contract between ruler and cosmos, hinged on these interpretations. A comet streaking across the sky might signal famine or rebellion, while planets converging in a rare conjunction could herald the rise of a new dynasty. The emperor's astronomers weren't stargazers, they were celestial journalists, translating cosmic headlines into political strategy. The precision of these records still astounds modern scientists. The same comet, later known as Halley's, appears in Chinese texts as far back as 240 BC, described with clinical detail, a broom star with a tail pointing east. Supernova observations from 1054 were so exact that today's astronomers use them to identify the Crab Nebula's origin. But what's truly remarkable is how these celestial reports were archived. Unlike the mystical omens of Babylon, Chinese records read like imperial audits, dates, positions, durations, all meticulously logged in the astronomical treatise of each dynasty's official history. This wasn't astrology as we think of it. It was cosmic accounting where the heavens balanced the books of human governance. Nowhere is this fusion of sky and state clearer than in the Forbidden City's design. Beijing's layout mirrors the celestial order, with the emperor's throne aligned to the North Star, the unmoving center around which all heavens revolve. The Temple of Heaven, where rulers performed the annual grain prayer ceremony, features a three-tiered circular altar representing the cosmic hierarchy: Earth, Man, and Heaven meeting in perfect harmony. Even the colors held astronomical meaning. Blue tiles on the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests mirrored the eastern sky where spring rains were summoned. Every architectural choice reinforced one immutable truth: that the emperor wasn't just a political leader, but the pivot between celestial will and earthly order. The Chinese zodiac reveals how deeply astronomy permeated daily life. Unlike Western zodiac signs tied to birth months, the 12 animal signs operate on a 12-year cycle linked to Jupiter's orbit. But there's a twist: the system also incorporates 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, water, and yin-yang forces, creating a 60-year combinatorial pattern. Farmers consulted these cycles for planting, couples for marriage compatibility, even generals for battle timing. The legend behind the zodiac, where the Jade Emperor held a celestial race to determine the animal order, might sound like folklore, yet its practical use in almanacs governed everything from festivals to funeral dates. What set China apart was its institutionalization of celestial knowledge. While other cultures had priest astronomers, China established the Astronomical Bureau as early as the Han Dynasty, with officials testing applicants on complex calculations. By the Tang Dynasty, the Bureau employed over 1,000 staff, maintaining observatories from Nanjing to Mongolia. Their greatest innovation, the armillary sphere, a bronze model of the heavens with interlocking rings tracking planetary movements, so advanced that Jesuit missionaries centuries later marveled at its precision. This bureaucratic approach turned starlight into statecraft, where predicting an eclipse wasn't just science, it was proof that the emperor maintained harmony between heaven and earth. The legacy of this system lingers in unexpected ways. Modern Mandarin still uses Tianwen, or sky patterns, for astronomy, reflecting that ancient view of the cosmos as a readable text. The same supernova ancient scribes recorded now help astrophysicists study stellar evolution, while traditional lunar calendars still guide festivals like Chinese New Year. Even the Communist Party's early flag featured a yellow star, not just a political symbol, but a nod to that enduring belief in celestial guidance. From imperial edicts to peasant almanacs, China's star law reminds us that astronomy was never just about understanding the universe. It was about anchoring human lives to its rhythms, one meticulous observation at a time. While Western astronomy often credits telescopes and written treatises for unlocking the cosmos, some of humanity's most sophisticated celestial knowledge flourished without a single page or lens, passed down through stories, songs, and generations of keen observation. Take the Aboriginal Australians' emu in the sky, a constellation unlike any other. Instead of connecting stars, they traced the dark patches of the Milky Way, seeing the silhouette of an emu stretching across the night. When its body appeared high overhead, it signaled the season for gathering eggs. When it seemed to run along the horizon, it warned of scarce food ahead. This wasn't just stargazing, it was an ecological almanac etched in shadows, a reminder that the sky and land were inseparable teachers. Half a world away, the Navajo wove constellations into moral instruction. Their first big one, a cluster we call Orion, wasn't just a hunter but a guardian who taught balance over hunting, would make the stars dim in disapproval. The Pleiades, known as the Hard Flint Boys, told of wayward youths transformed into stars as a lesson in responsibility. Unlike Greek myths that framed celestial patterns as gods and monsters, Navajo star stories emphasized reciprocity. Humans weren't separate from the cosmos but participants in its order. Misbehave and the stars might withhold rain, show respect, and they'd guide your way. This wasn't fantasy, it was a pedagogical tool, embedding astronomy into ethics through oral tradition. What unified these indigenous systems was their refusal to compartmentalize knowledge. Where modern science separates astronomy from ecology, spirituality, or social structure, cultures like the Maori saw them as threads of the same tapestry. Their navigators memorized hundreds of star paths through chants called Wakapapa, which doubled as genealogies linking ancestors to celestial bodies. A single Waiata song could encode the rising of Matariki Pleiades, the phases of the moon for planting Kumara, and the migration of fish, all while honoring the Atua gods who governed these cycles. This holistic approach didn't just preserve facts, it sustained an entire world view where every star held layers of practical, cultural, and sacred meaning. The survival of this knowledge speaks to its resilience. When European colonizers dismissed oral traditions as primitive, they overlooked systems like the Polynesian star compass, which divided the horizon into 32 directional houses, each marked by a star's rising and setting, all memorized without maps. Or the Inuits' ability to predict weather by reading the halos around the moon, a skill honed through generations of Arctic survival. These weren't guesses, they were tested theories, refined over millennia and safeguarded in language. The Yolngu people of Australia even encoded astronomical events in ceremonial dances, their movements mirroring the motions of celestial bodies, turning performance into a living encyclopedia. Perhaps the most profound contrast lies in perspective. Western astronomy often frames the universe as a mechanical void to be conquered, while indigenous cosmologies see it as a relational web. The Lakota's Black Road, their name for the Milky Way, isn't just a galaxy, it's the path souls travel to the spirit world, flanked by the wisdom of ancestors. The Quechua word for the cosmos, Pacha, means both time and space, refusing to split them into separate concepts. These views don't just challenge the boundaries between science and spirituality. They offer a radical alternative, one where knowledge isn't about dominating nature but conversing with it. Today, as astronomers rediscover indigenous insights like how Aboriginal fire star traditions accurately tracked the variable star Betelgeuse, we're reminded that the sky has always been more than a spectacle. It's a story, a compass, a mirror reflecting humanity's endless creativity in decoding the universe. Whether through telescopes or oral epics, the goal remains the same: to find our place in the vast, shimmering dialogue between Earth and sky. While Europe navigated the so-called Dark Ages, a brilliant light of discovery burned across the Islamic world, one that wouldn't just preserve ancient astronomy but propel it to unprecedented heights. Picture the bustling house of wisdom in 9th century Baghdad, where teams of scholars pored over Greek, Persian, and Indian manuscripts, translating Ptolemy's Almagest and Brahmagupta's Brahmasputa Siddhanta into Arabic. But this wasn't mere archival work, it was creative reinvention. Take the astrolabe, a device the Greeks had used crudely for navigation. Islamic scholars like Al-Khwarizmi, whose name gives us the word algorithm, transformed it into a handheld planetarium capable of calculating prayer times, mapping stars, and even determining the Qibla, the sacred direction toward Mecca. These weren't just tools, they were bridges between faith and science, proving that devotion could fuel innovation rather than hinder it. The Maragha Observatory in 13th century Persia epitomized this golden age. Under the patronage of Hulagu Khan, Nasir al-Din al-Tusi and his team didn't just observe the heavens, they dismantled Ptolemy's flawed planetary models and rebuilt them. Al-Tusi's Tusi couple, a geometric breakthrough, solved a glaring error in Greek astronomy by proving circular motion could generate straight-line motion. This idea would later inspire Copernicus, though history often forgets the link. Meanwhile, Ibn al-Shatir's models of Mercury's orbit so closely resembled Copernican heliocentrism that scholars debate whether the Polish astronomer accessed his work. What's undeniable is that these thinkers weren't copyists, they were pioneers who dared to correct antiquity's giants. Yet Islamic astronomy's brilliance wasn't confined to academia. It pulsed through daily life in ways both practical and profound. The lunar Hijri calendar, still used for religious events like Ramadan, required meticulous moon phase calculations, spurring advances in spherical trigonometry. Mosques from Cordoba to Damascus incorporated celestial alignments. The Great Mosque of Samarra's spiral minaret doubled as a giant sundial, its shadow marking prayer times. Even the humble Qibla compass, developed from astrolabe technology, turned every Muslim's worship into a moment of cosmic connection, aligning individual devotion with the universe's mathematical order. This era's legacy isn't just in star charts or instruments, but in a radical idea that scientific progress thrives when cultures collide. The Zij star catalogues, blending Greek, Indian, and Persian data, became medieval astronomy's gold standard. Al-Batani's calculations of Earth's axial tilt were so precise there within a degree of modern measurements. And let's not forget the names Aldebaran, Betelgeuse, Vega Arabic terms that still grace our night skies. While Europe's Renaissance later reclaimed this knowledge, the Islamic world had kept the flame alive, proving that curiosity knows no borders and the stars speak every language. For centuries, the universe revolved around us literally. The geocentric model wasn't just a scientific theory, it was a cosmic comfort, placing Earth at the heart of creation like a jewel in a divine setting. Then came Nicolaus Copernicus, a Polish mathematician who dared to rearrange the heavens. His heliocentric model, quietly published in 1543, didn't merely tweak celestial mechanics, it pulled the rug from under humanity's feet. Imagine the shock. Earth, once the universe's throne, became just another planet circling an unremarkable star. This wasn't just about orbits, it was an existential quake, rattling the foundations of religion, philosophy, and human exceptionalism. The resistance was fierce, and for good reason. The old Ptolemaic system had been woven into the very fabric of power. The Catholic Church's entire cosmology mirrored Aristotle's nested spheres, Earth fallen and imperfect at the center, heaven pure and unchanging beyond the stars. Demoting Earth to a wandering rock threatened more than astronomy. It unraveled a sacred hierarchy that placed popes and kings just below angels. When Galileo pointed his telescope at Jupiter's moons, proving not everything circled Earth, his heresy trial wasn't just about science, it was about authority. Who gets to redefine humanity's place in the cosmos? The answer, until then, had always been the Church. Yet Copernicus's revolution wasn't just a top-down drama. It seeped into art, literature, and everyday life. Shakespeare's troubled Hamlet laments, "This goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory, a line dripping with cosmic dislocation." Dutch painters began depicting skies not as symbolic gold leaf but as vast, impersonal voids. Even calendars shifted. If Earth wasn't special, why should its years be counted from Christ's birth? The Gregorian reform of 1582, which fixed leap years by the sun's motion, was a quiet admission that celestial truth trumped tradition. What's often overlooked is how the Copernican shift mirrored broader changes. The Reformation was challenging religious monopolies, explorers were redrawing maps, and merchants were upending feudal orders. A universe without a center suited an age questioning all centers of power, knowledge, even truth itself. Kepler's elliptical orbits and Newton's gravity laws didn't just perfect Copernicus's model. They cemented a new worldview where nature followed rules, not whims. The stars no longer dictated fate, they obeyed mathematics, but here's the twist. This demotion ultimately expanded human horizons. If Earth wasn't unique, perhaps other worlds harbored life, an idea Giordano Bruno championed before being burned at the stake. The telescope, once feared as a tool of heresy, became a window to infinity. By the 18th century, astronomers like William Herschel were mapping the Milky Way's structure, proving the sun itself wasn't central. Each step outward shrank humanity's ego while stretching its imagination. Today, the Copernican principle, the idea that we occupy no privileged place in the universe, underpins everything from the search for alien life to measurements of cosmic expansion. Those first shaky diagrams of sun-centered orbits didn't just change how we see the stars, they taught us humility before the cosmos's grandeur. The revolution Copernicus sparked reminds us that scientific progress isn't just about facts, it's about courage to surrender comforting myths for unsettling truths. And that, perhaps, is the most human trait of all. Galileo's hands trembled not with fear, but revelation as he sketched Jupiter's moons through his rudimentary telescope in 1610. These hurried ink drawings, now preserved like sacred texts, weren't just scientific records, they were the first brushstrokes of a new cosmic portrait. Each smudged line captured more than celestial bodies, they marked the moment art and astronomy became inseparable allies in humanity's quest to decode the universe. Across Europe, painters and mathematicians shared a radical belief that beauty and truth weren't opposites, but twin lenses for understanding creation. When Kepler calculated that planets moved in ellipses, not perfect circles, in 1609, he didn't just shatter Greek ideals, he gave artists a new vocabulary of motion, inspiring dynamic compositions that mirrored the heavens' untidy elegance. Consider Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, where the goddess floats ashore on a seashell. Modern astronomers have mapped the painting's celestial backdrop to an actual planetary alignment in 1486, with Venus shining brightest near Jupiter, a configuration the artist likely witnessed. This wasn't decorative whimsy, it was a coded message about harmony between divine beauty and cosmic order. Even the shell's curvature echoes Fibonacci spirals found in galaxies, a subtle nod to nature's repeating patterns. Renaissance masters didn't just depict myths, they embedded observational science into every gilded detail, turning canvases into covert star charts. The era's most revolutionary tool wasn't just the telescope, it was perspective itself. Filippo Brunelleschi's linear perspective technique, developed to render architecture realistically, accidentally equipped astronomers to plot celestial positions with grid-like precision. Suddenly, the moon's craters could be drawn with the same geometric rigor as Florence's cathedral dome. Artists like Albrecht Dürer took this further, crafting woodcuts of celestial phenomena so accurate they doubled as scientific illustrations. His 1515 Northern Sky map didn't just decorate noble libraries, it guided navigators and scholars, proving art could be both aesthetically profound and empirically vital. This fusion reached its zenith in the celestial globes of Jost Bugge, clockmaker to Kepler. These intricate brass spheres married clockwork mechanics with hand-engraved constellations, their gears mimicking planetary motion so precisely they predicted eclipses. Bugge's workshop became a microcosm of Renaissance ideals, where artisans, scientists, and philosophers collaborated without hierarchy. The globe's engravings of mythological figures dancing among stars weren't mere decoration. They preserved ancient star lore while advancing cutting-edge astronomy, a visual bridge between past and future. What made this period extraordinary was its refusal to compartmentalize. When Galileo observed sunspots, he didn't publish dry data. He composed dialogues where fictional characters debated his findings, weaving science into drama. Kepler's Somnium, a fantastical tale of moon voyages, laid the groundwork for science fiction while smuggling heliocentric theory past censors. Even the Medicis patron dynasty of both Botticelli and Galileo understood that art and astronomy shared a common purpose: to reveal the sublime logic hidden beneath chaos. Their courts became salons where poets debated comet trajectories and painters calibrated pigments to match Mars' reddish hue. The legacy of this collision still illuminates our world. Modern astrophotography owes as much to Renaissance chiaroscuro as to CCD sensors, its compositions guided by centuries of artistic balance. Planetarium shows choreograph orbits with the same grace as Botticelli's figures, proving that science without beauty risks sterility, and art without truth risks emptiness. The Renaissance taught us that to map the stars, we must sometimes pick up a paintbrush alongside our telescopes, because understanding the cosmos isn't just about calculation, but wonder. Isaac Newton's prism experiments didn't just split light into colors, they shattered an entire worldview. When his Principia Mathematica unveiled gravity's universal laws in 1687, the cosmos transformed from a divine theater into a vast ticking machine. Planets became cogs in a celestial clockwork, their motions predictable to the last decimal. For Enlightenment thinkers, this was triumph. The universe, once ruled by capricious gods, now obeyed equations any scholar could grasp. But for poets and mystics, Newton's rainbow came at a cost. William Blake famously scrawled, "God is not a mathematical diagram," in the margins of his Newton biography, a cry against what he saw as the draining of wonder from the stars. The irony was profound. The very tools that unlocked the heavens' secrets also seemed to bleach them of their magic. Yet the Enlightenment's mechanistic vision couldn't fully tame the sky's allure. Look at Edmund Halley, who used Newton's laws to predict his comet's return in 1758, turning a celestial vagabond into a cosmic timepiece. Even as science demystified comets as icy rubble rather than divine portents, their appearances still sparked global awe. Newspapers tracked Halley's approach like celebrity gossip, while artists like Joseph Wright of Derby painted it as a luminous omen hovering over awestruck crowds. The comet became both a triumph of rationalism and a reminder that calculation couldn't extinguish human wonder. This tension birthed a curious duality in how culture consumed astronomy. On one hand, Orrery's intricate mechanical models of the solar system became aristocratic status symbols, their brass gears turning in drawing rooms to demonstrate celestial mechanics. On the other, romantic poets like Coleridge and Keats wove the stars back into myth, lamenting how Newton's sleep had charmed the universe to geometry. Keats's Lamia even accused science of unweaving the rainbow, a direct challenge to Newton's optics, yet these weren't rejections of discovery so much as pleas to preserve mystery, to let the stars be both measured and marvelous. The era's greatest astronomers often embodied this balance. Caroline Herschel, who catalogued thousands of nebulae with her brother William, didn't just coldly log coordinates. Her journals brim with descriptions of star clusters as diamond dust and galaxies as ghostly veils, blending precision with poetry. When William discovered Uranus in 1781, the event wasn't merely a data point. It reignited public fascination with cosmic exploration, inspiring everything from symphonies to satirical cartoons. Even the naming of the new planet reflected this duality. Uranus honored the Greek sky god, a mythological nod grafted onto rigorous orbital math. Perhaps no artifact captures this tension better than the 18th century Zodiac globe. These ornate spheres mapped constellations alongside their corresponding Newtonian orbital paths, their surfaces adorned with both mythological beasts and logarithmic scales. They weren't just tools but talismans, attempts to reconcile the calculable and the celestial. In an age when almanacs sat beside hymnals on cottage shelves, people still timed plantings by the moon even as they marveled at eclipse predictions. The universe might run like clockwork, but humanity kept dreaming in starlight. The legacy of this duality still shapes us. Modern astrophysics calculates black holes' gravity, while documentaries narrate them as cosmic monsters. We track meteor showers via apps, yet gasp when a shooting star streaks overhead. Newton's laws may have grounded the heavens in reason, but they couldn't sever our instinct to look up and wonder. Proof that even in a disenchanted universe, the stars never truly lose their power to stir the soul. Dante's Divine Comedy didn't just describe hell and paradise, it built them from the stars themselves. Climbing through Ptolemy's crystalline spheres, the poet turned medieval cosmology into a spiritual roadmap, each planet a stage of divine revelation. Saturn's golden ladder symbolized contemplation, while the primum mobile, the outermost sphere, pulsed with the love that moves the sun and other stars. This wasn't just poetry, it was theology written in celestial code, a universe where astronomy and morality were inextricably linked. For Dante, the heavens weren't distant lights but a mirror of the soul's journey, their perfect orbits reflecting the harmony sinners lost and saints regained. Centuries later, science fiction would repurpose the cosmos for new anxieties. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, often called the first sci-fi novel, framed the Arctic wilderness as a hellscape rivaling Dante's icy Ninth Circle. But here, the monster wasn't a demon, he was science's abandoned child. By the time H.G. Wells wrote The War of the Worlds in 1898, Mars had replaced hell as the source of existential dread, its invaders reflecting colonial guilt and industrial age fears of dehumanization. The stars were no longer static symbols, they became portals to existential threats. From Arthur C. Clarke's unknowable monoliths in 2001 to the dystopian exoplanets of the expanse, where politics follows gravity's brutal logic. What unites these narratives is their use of astronomy as a metaphor for human limits. Dante's universe had edges. His god sat just beyond the fixed stars, a boundary both comforting and confining. Modern sci-fi, by contrast, drowns in infinity. Stanislaw Lem's Solaris imagines a sentient ocean planet that defies comprehension, mocking humanity's hunger for cosmic meaning. Even optimistic visions like Star Trek grapple with the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so vast, why does it feel so empty? The shift from Dante's ordered spheres to today's chaotic multiverse reveals a deeper truth. How we map the stars reflects how we map our own significance. Yet some threads endure. The Andromeda galaxy in medieval texts was a smudge on the sky, a little cloud in Persian astronomer al-Sufi's 10th century catalogue. Now it's the backdrop for Arrival's alien linguists who rewrite time itself. Both visions, though separated by a millennium, share an instinct to project our hopes and horrors onto the dark. Whether through Dante's Pilgrim or a starship captain, literature reminds us that the universe is more than equations and optics. It's the oldest story we'll never finish telling, where every new discovery writes another line in an epic we've been drafting since the first campfire turned its gaze upward. Modern astroarchaeologists don't just study ruins, they resurrect ancient skies. Using software like Stellarium and GIS mapping, researchers can wind back celestial clocks to see precisely what stargazers witnessed millennia ago. At Cambodia's Angkor Wat, digital reconstructions revealed something astonishing. The temple's western gate aligns perfectly with the spring equinox sunrise, while its central towers mirror the Draco constellation's pattern around 3000 BC. These aren't random overlaps, they're frozen celestial blueprints, proving the Khmer Empire didn't just build temples, they engineered stone constellations. Take the case of Newgrange in Ireland. For centuries, this 5,000-year-old passage tomb was dismissed as a primitive burial mound, until archaeologists noticed its roof box, a narrow opening above the entrance. Digital simulations showed that at winter solstice dawn, sunlight pierces this slit like a laser, flooding the inner chamber for exactly 17 minutes. The builders didn't have calculators or telescopes, yet they encoded a solar event into architecture with a margin of error smaller than modern skyscrapers. What we once called mythology now emerges as precise observational science wrapped in spiritual metaphor. The real breakthrough came when researchers cross-referenced these alignments with oral traditions. The Maya Dresden Codex's cosmic monster, Eclipses, matched actual astronomical events when plugged into sky mapping software. Aboriginal songlines describing the emu in the sky correspond to dark dust lanes in the Milky Way visible only from specific latitudes. Even Homer's description of Odysseus navigating by the stars' long-assumed poetic license aligns with Bronze Age celestial configurations reconstructed from clay tablets. These aren't coincidences, they're cultural encryption where stories safeguarded star knowledge across generations. What makes astroarchaeology revolutionary is its dismantling of the primitive vs. advanced dichotomy. The Nabta-Playa stone circles in Egypt's Sahara, older than Stonehenge by a millennium, track Sirius and Orion's movements with mathematical sophistication rivaling medieval sextants. Yet these same builders left no written records. Their textbooks were sightlines etched into desert bedrock. Similarly, Polynesian navigators who crossed thousands of ocean miles without compasses relied on mental star maps so precise they could detect currents by subtle shifts in celestial reflections. Modern software confirms their routes matched optimal star paths with 98% accuracy. The implications ripple beyond academia. When software revealed that Peru's Chanquillo Towers functioned as a solar calendar, marking solstices by casting shadows like a 2,300-year-old sundial, it challenged Eurocentric narratives of scientific progress. Here was a pre-Incan civilization mastering solar astronomy centuries before the Roman Empire fell. Similarly, reconstructions of Babylonian star catalogues show their predictions of Jupiter's motions were accurate to within 5 degrees, achieved without telescopes, using only geometry and generations of meticulous notation on clay. Yet the greatest discovery might be how these cultures wove astronomy into everyday life. At Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, ancestral Puebloan petroglyphs depict the 1064 AD supernova that birthed the Crab Nebula, not as a singular event, but integrated into agricultural calendars. Maya farmers still plant maize when the Pleiades rise, just as their ancestors did, proving celestial wisdom wasn't locked in temples but thrived in cornfields and fishing nets. Astroarchaeology isn't just uncovering lost knowledge. It's revealing how deeply our ancestors lived by the stars' rhythms, turning celestial patterns into the very fabric of survival. As laser scans and AI uncover more alignments from the star shafts of Egypt's pyramids to the solstice markers hidden in Cambodia's jungle temples, we're forced to reconsider what science truly means. These builders lacked our technology, but their fusion of observation, mathematics, and myth may hold lessons we're only beginning to decode. The past whispers through stone and starlight, reminding us that the universe's mysteries aren't just solved with equations, but by listening to the stories etched in both earth and sky. In the heart of Mexico, as November's zenith sun casts no shadow at noon, families gather not in mourning but in vibrant celebration. The Day of the Dead coincides precisely with this astronomical event, when the sun aligns directly overhead, a moment ancient Mesoamericans believed opened a portal between worlds. Far from macabre, the festival's marigold arches and sugar skulls mirror the cosmos. The flowers' golden hues evoke the sun's path, while candlelit altars twinkle like constellations guiding spirits home. This isn't just tradition, it's celestial choreography preserved across centuries, where astronomy and ancestry dance together under the same sky that once guided Aztec priests. Half a world away, India's Kumbh Mela transforms riverbanks into temporary cities larger than most metropolises, all because of Jupiter's position in Aquarius. The festival's timing hinges on a 12-year cycle tied to the planet's orbit, a rhythm first calculated by Vedic astrologers who saw Jupiter's slow march as a divine clock. Pilgrims flock to bathe at the exact moment astrologers deem most auspicious, believing the waters absorb cosmic energy when the stars align. What's astonishing is the precision. Modern software confirms these ancient calculations match Jupiter's actual movements within days, proving this isn't blind faith but inherited celestial calculus. These festivals do more than mark time, they dissolve the line between past and present. In Japan, the Obon festival honors ancestors when the Milky Way is most visible, its luminous band symbolizing the river souls cross to visit the living. The Aymara people of the Andes celebrate their new year on the winter solstice, offering coca leaves to the rising sun, as their Inca ancestors did at Machu Picchu's Intihuatana stone. Even Christmas, with its borrowed date near the solstice, carries echoes of Roman Saturnalia, a festival of light reborn under a Christian sky. The magic lies in how these celebrations democratize astronomy. You don't need a telescope to feel the universe's pulse during Thailand's Loy Krathong, when thousands of lanterns float upward like reverse stars, mimicking the full moon's reflection on water. Or in Sweden's midsummer, where maypoles twirl under a sun that never sets, a living lesson in axial tilt. These aren't relics but living classrooms, where children learn orbital mechanics through bonfire stories and elders recite eclipse lore like bedtime tales. What unites them all is a shared human instinct to turn celestial events into collective joy. When Mauritania's Imragan fishermen launch their lunar calendar-guided netting season, or when Navajo communities gather for star-centric storytelling during winter's first crescent moon, they're not just observing the sky. They're reaffirming a bond as old as humanity itself, the understanding that we are, and always have been, citizens of the cosmos. The stars that guided our ancestors' festivals still beckon us to look up, celebrate, and remember, not just with data but with dance, song, and shared wonder. Colonial ships cutting through southern seas carried more than flags and firearms. They bore an arrogance that dismissed millennia of indigenous star knowledge as primitive myth. When British astronomer Royal Neville Maskelyne declared in 1768 that Polynesians navigated by mere chance, he ignored what Pacific Islanders had known for centuries. The ocean was a star-lit highway, its paths memorized in chants detailing the rising and setting of hundreds of celestial markers. Yet the irony is thick as tropical humidity. Captain James Cook's very discoveries relied on Tupaia, a Rayetian navigator who could pinpoint islands using only the star's angles and the swell of waves. Tupaia's mental star charts, passed down through generations without a single written word, guided the endeavor more accurately than European sextants through uncharted waters. This wasn't just assistance, it was the quiet colonization of knowledge, where indigenous expertise enabled conquest while being erased from its own story. The pattern repeated across continents. Spanish chroniclers in the Andes dismissed Inca quipus knotted cords recording celestial cycles as pagan trinkets, even as they plundered observatories like the Coricancha's gold-lined walls aligned to solstices. Dutch settlers in South Africa scoffed at Khoisan star lore predicting seasonal rains, only to later document the same patterns in colonial almanacs. The suppression wasn't incidental, it was strategic. By framing Western astronomy as the sole legitimate science, colonizers severed indigenous peoples from cosmological systems that anchored their calendars, agriculture, and governance. A Maori elder's warning that, when the stars are forgotten, the land grows sick, proved prophetic. Displaced from star-based planting cycles, communities faced famine as colonial grids ignored subtle celestial cues woven into oral traditions. Yet resilience flickered like starlight through cracks in oppression. Enslaved Africans carried Orion myths across the Atlantic, transforming the hunter into Osiris in Brazilian candomblé ceremonies. Aboriginal Australians imprisoned on missions whispered emu in the sky stories to children, preserving dark sky constellations forbidden by missionaries who called them devil's pictures. Even the Maya, whose codices were burned as heresy, hid astronomical knowledge in weaving patterns and folk dances, their Tzolk'in calendar surviving in the folds of traditional dress. These weren't just acts of memory but resistance, proof that star knowledge, once woven into culture's fabric, couldn't be fully unraveled by force. The reckoning now unfolding in planetariums and textbooks is long overdue. Modern astronomers are partnering with Navajo elders to interpret supernova petroglyphs at Choco Canyon, while satellite data confirms Pacific Islanders' star paths matched optimal routes within 1% deviation. The Hawaiian language revival includes rebuilding traditional star compasses, and Canada's First Nations are integrating Orion stories into school science curricula. Each effort chips at the myth of Western superiority, revealing how racism, not rationality, labeled Indigenous astronomy unscientific. After all, Polynesians colonized the Pacific's vastness using only the stars millennia before Europe dared leave coastal sightlines, a feat of celestial engineering no European vessel matched until the age of clocks. What emerges isn't just corrected history but a new cosmic paradigm. When the Maori reassert that Mataraki's heliacal rising marks their new year, or when Inuit elders explain how moon halos predict storms better than barometers, they're doing more than reclaiming knowledge, they're healing a rupture between humanity and the heavens. The stars, it turns out, were never silent. We just silenced those who understood their language. Astronomy today, a cultural continuum. While modern astrophysics explores black holes and exoplanets, cultural astronomy thrives in astrology apps and solstice celebrations. The James Webb Telescope's images evoke the same wonder as ancient star myths. Our tech has changed, but our cosmic curiosity endures. Astronomy remains a dialogue between data and meaning, science and soul. Consider the James Webb Space Telescope's first deep-field image, a mosaic of galaxies swirling like jeweled dust against the void. When NASA released that image in 2022, social media erupted not just with scientific awe, but with something deeper. People compared its ethereal glow to Van Gogh's Starry Night. to Hindu depictions of the cosmic egg, to Maya visions of the world tree, the same galaxies Hubble had photographed appeared transformed, as if Webb's infrared eyes had peeled back a veil between the measurable and the mystical. This wasn't just data, it was a mirror reflecting humanity's timeless urge to find the sublime in the stars. Yet for all our cutting-edge tools, we still mark time by celestial rhythms older than writing. Google's headquarters align with the summer solstice sunrise like a modern Stonehenge, while Silicon Valley engineers check their astrological compatibility on CoStar. The winter solstice still draws thousands to Newgrange, their smartphones capturing the same sunlight that Neolithic builders channeled 5,000 years ago. Even SpaceX's launch schedules nod to celestial patterns. Missions often time liftoffs to planetary alignments that would have made Babylonian astrologers nod in approval. The paradox is striking. We've mapped the cosmic microwave background, yet we still whisper wishes on shooting stars. This duality pulses through popular culture. Marvel's Thor movies dress Norse cosmology in quantum physics garb, while Netflix's Ancient Apocalypse speculates about lost astronomical wisdom. Planetariums from Tokyo to Berlin blend laser shows with indigenous star lore, projecting Polynesian navigation chants alongside exoplanet data. The hit game, Hades, resurrects Greek constellations as characters, their dialogue ripped straight from Aratus's 2,300-year-old astronomical poem. Somehow, the more we learn about neutron stars and dark matter, the more we crave the stories that make the universe feel like home. Perhaps this explains astrology's stubborn appeal. Though debunked by science, its 12 zodiac signs remain a global lingua franca, a shared mythology in an age of fractured belief systems. Your morning horoscope might be algorithmic nonsense, but its roots stretch back to Babylon's omen tablets and Ptolemy's star charts. When apps like The Pattern analyze your birth chart alongside NASA ephemeris data, they're digitizing a tradition as old as Ur's ziggurates. The real magic isn't in predictions, but in the human need to feel the planet's dance means something, even if just as metaphor. The true continuity lies in our questions. Ancient Egyptians pondered whether the sun god Ra sailed through an underworld ocean at night. Modern physicists simulate multiverses where cosmic laws rewrite themselves. Both are attempts to frame the unthinkable in stories we can grasp. When astrophysicist Jana Levin calls black holes the cosmic scribes, she channels the same poetic instinct that made the Maya depict eclipses as jaguars devouring the sun. The equations may change, but the wonder remains proof that astronomy was never just about finding answers, but learning how to ask in ever grander ways. So the next time you scroll through a star mapping app or share a solstice selfie, remember, you're part of an unbroken chain. From the first hominid who tracked the moon's phases to the Webb telescope team calibrating mirrors finer than a human hair, we've always been stardust trying to understand itself. The tools evolve, but the sky still whispers, and we still lean closer to listen. From the standing stones of Stonehenge to the golden mirrors of the James Webb Space Telescope, one thread connects every chapter of human history. The stars above have never just been distant lights. They've been our clock, our compass, our storybook. Ancient priests tracking solstices and modern physicists unraveling dark matter are united by the same fundamental impulse to make sense of our place in the vast cosmic tapestry. Those early astronomers didn't merely observe the heavens, they wove them into the very fabric of existence, turning celestial patterns into the foundations of cities, the rhythms of harvests, the language of gods. Think about the sheer audacity of it. Without satellites or calculators, cultures from Babylon to Polynesia mapped planetary motions with nothing but patience and naked eyes. The Maya predicted eclipses centuries in advance. The Inca engineered cities aligned with the sun's path, and Aboriginal Australians navigated continents by star songs passed down through generations. These weren't just technical feats, they were acts of devotion, a dialogue between earth and sky that shaped laws, art, and even the way we measure time. The 7-day week, a Babylonian homage to the 7 wandering celestial bodies they could see. The pyramids of Giza, a stairway to the stars, their shafts pointing to Orion's belt like cosmic signposts. Everywhere we dig, we find the same revelation. The sky was never just overhead, it was within us. What's remarkable is how these ancient insights still echo today. When you check your horoscope, even skeptically, you're tapping into a tradition as old as the ziggurats of Ur. When crowds gather at Stonehenge for the solstice, they're participating in a ritual that predates the wheel. Modern astronauts describe the overview effect, a profound shift in perspective when seeing Earth from space that mirrors the awe Neolithic cultures felt watching the Milky Way blaze unpolluted by city lights. The tools have changed, but the wonder remains. This legacy challenges us to see astronomy not as a linear march of progress, but as a spiral, a return again and again to the same fundamental questions. The Babylonians feared eclipses as divine displeasure. We now chase them with cameras and flight itineraries. Yet both responses spring from the same source, a hunger to reconcile the predictable and the sublime. Whether through myth or mathematics, humanity keeps reaching for the stars, not just to understand them, but to understand ourselves. So tonight, step outside. Look up. Those same stars guided pharaohs to their afterlife, Polynesian voyagers to new islands, and Galileo to a revolution. They're more than nuclear furnaces or navigation aids. They're the oldest mirrors we have, reflecting back our dreams, our fears, and our unshakable need to connect. The cosmos whispers to everyone. The only question is, are you listening? Drop your favorite celestial story in the comments, whether it's a family tradition, a myth that captivates you, or a moment the night sky took your breath away. And if you've enjoyed this journey through time and space, hit subscribe to keep exploring history's greatest mysteries together. The universe has plenty more stories.